Hello and welcome to another episode of the Socialistics Podcast. I am Jason Yormark, your host, owner, and founder of Socialistics. Today we have another interesting guest that I'm excited to have here. We're going to talk more agency shop and some things about how to simplify digital marketing as a small business owner. Welcome, Michael Buzinski from Buzzworthy Integrated Marketing.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Absolutely. So let's just kind of jump right in, and the same way I typically do with every guest. Tell us a little bit about your backstory, how you came to be, where you came from, what you're doing, all that good stuff.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I was in the Air Force for 10 years, and before that I was a failed musician. I was a failed musician from for about, I'd say, what did I do? About 15, 16 years. I was a working musician, never really made it. So when I got out of the Air Force, I decided to work I'm sorry. Let me get this. I didn't know this is supposed to be silenced.
No problem.
I just want to get this off because it's going to go off again. Stop. It pisses me off. Dink, dink, dink. There it goes. So that's off. And you didn't hear anything else, so we're good to go. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Okay. So you want to just start over?
Yeah, just pick up like after that, answering that question. You can just start.
Okay. All right. Well, so I started my journey right after being in the Air Force for about 10 years. Before the Air Force, I was a working musician. And throughout my Air Force career, I was a working musician. And so when I got out, I finally figured out I was a failed working musician. So I decided to start a recording studio. And so the original rendition of my business is Biz Studios. And I was a recording studio for starving musicians. And I realized within a year that living off of starving musicians was a horrible business plan. So I quickly pivoted into media production and my other passion, which is small businesses and just dealing with entrepreneurs. I just like the mindset of an entrepreneur and business owners. I connect with them at the same level, so it's great. And so I started working with those, and then over the years, I started getting asked more and more marketing questions, and so it eventually evolved into a creative agency. And then a couple years ago, we were about 2.5 million, about 25 folks, in-house, 13,000 square foot facility, the whole 9 yards. And I just looked at everything and I'm like, I hate my job. I own a job. I'm not a marketer anymore. I'm a CEO. I'm a babysitter. I'm a building manager. I'm everything but a marketer now. And it wasn't where I was at and my brain wasn't liking it. And so I decided to restructure my entire company. And I broke it all down into 2 different divisions, and I kept the media production for my legacy clients, and then I pushed forward with a new brand called Buzzworthy Integrated Marketing, where we only focus on the digital marketing for small businesses and the web development for those campaigns, and that's all we do now, and I just love it. I have 10 folks now that work for me, but we went completely virtual, so everybody has their own home offices, both my W-2 and my 1099 contractors. They all work the same way. It's just a matter of like who wants what as far as how they like to get paid. And so we just kind of have a very different culture now, and I get to be a marketer on a regular basis, which is beautiful.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can definitely relate to a lot of kind of what you're saying. One thing I got to throw out there, you said Air Force. So one of our clients was the Air Force.
Cool.
For about 6 months, we worked with the Pacific Northwest division with their recruiting. We ran their social media efforts to help with the recruiting. And it went really well, but it was just one of those bureaucratic things where they ran out of budget. They could only pay a certain agency a certain amount over a certain period of time.
Yep.
So it didn't end up lasting beyond that, which was really unfortunate because we were just killing it for them.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Man, I loved doing that, and hopefully there's an opportunity for us to kind of work with them again. So had to throw that out there.
No worries, man. Oh, this is like federal. I've done some federal work, and contracting is a pain. I was in it. And when I was in, I actually had a side job. I flew on AWACS So I was what they call a flyer. And so when you're a flyer, you don't fly every day. And on mine, as a big plane, we only flew a couple times a month and when we were home. So you had a side job, and it was an additional duties, we called it. And resource advisory is their kind of accounting thing. And we dealt with people dealing with that kind of stuff. And it's like the contracts, all of the stuff that they have to jump through is ridiculous. Just to get a contract is hard. To hold on to it is ridiculous. But you'll probably get another chance.
Hopefully, I would hope so. You said some interesting things there. I kind of want to dive in on.
Sure.
Just personally, just from my own experiences. I'm curious about your team makeup. You mentioned how you had a mix of W-2 and 1099 folks. How did that? As you kind of grew as an agency, how did that navigate? Like, did you kind of come out with kind of hiring both, or do you kind of let the prospects of the people that you were interviewing kind of dictate which they prefer? I'm curious how you navigate how you build your team and how they fall under one umbrella or the other.
Okay, that's a good question. And so when I was reorganizing the company and we were virtual, I had to dive into the tax code. Yeah. And there's a lot of reasons why employers love to have 1099, because it costs you about 12% less on the dollar to 1099 somebody. You have a lot less control over that. So there's these pluses and minuses of having one. When I originally did it, I'd look at, all right, who are non-essential or who are essential to my business. If I didn't have them, would I still be able to work? Can they work for multiple me's, right? Because that's kind of where that definition goes. So my first three regulars were 1099 contractors, because I didn't have a lot of hours for them, enough hours for them to be a full-time position, and in my reorganization, I didn't have any benefits. With the Obamacare, that was one of the things that hurt my creative agency, was that Obamacare was cheaper than our group healthcare. And I was like, we're all wasting money here, and you could get better care. And in my venture to give the best for my team, I actually cut my nose off to spite my face, and ended up with the people like, well, why would we work for you then? Like, you have no benefits. I'm like, like literally trying to help you people. So anyway, I have one. To answer your question, I kind of go with the flow as far as how many hours they're going to be, and is it beneficial for them? Because I've just decided it doesn't matter what I want.
Right. I
need somebody to do work, and I have a certain amount of money to give them. And I used to say, well, if you'd like to make 10% more, I'll do a 1099. I don't have to do all the paperwork at the end of the year. But now I'm like, whatever you're comfortable with. So I have an account coordinator that lives in Massachusetts, never worked. She's been out of the workforce for a long time. She's getting back in, and she doesn't know anything about 1099. She doesn't understand self-employment tax, all this stuff. I'm like, well, just put you on a W-2 and you'll never have to worry about it. And it makes her a very happy teammate. So really, I don't have a hard and fast, like, who can be, except for like my executive assistant. She has to be a W-2, because there's very specific things I need her to do in a certain amount of time, ... Even though she's not full time, right? Because we don't need her full time. That's one of the things that I realized when I reorganized my business, is that if I don't have an on-demand firm, I don't need to have somebody on the phone the whole time. So if you can do on-demand hiring, then when you're busy, you're paying more, but when you're busy, you're making more. So now your variable costs come with it, where when you have a salary, man, you're stuck with that. And if you don't fill their time, that's sunk cost, and you never get it back.
It's really interesting. I have the same mindset as you. So I built a team of folks that I just feel like we live in a different world. I think that, especially, the pandemic kind of pushed it along further and faster, but a lot of the people that I come across are not, they're fine being 1099s. They like to have that freedom of diversifying their income and not being an employee or being controlled. They'd rather be paid more and make their own choices about how they, invest in long-term savings, or how they facilitate health benefits. Like a lot of the folks, I have a predominantly all-woman team, and all of them either stay-at-home moms, or they just want to have a career and be able to be around their families. They get health benefits from their spouses. So they're like, I don't need that from you. Pay me more. So like very much like you, I let the people dictate what's important to them and do what's best for them. And ultimately, that's predominantly how it's played out. Now,
Exactly.
There's legal and tax all that stuff I'm still trying to kind of dig through, but eventually I know I have to kind of be able to offer both. But it's interesting to kind of get perspective from someone else that's kind of gone through that. So
yeah, I think that my team is predominantly, I think I have me and one other gentleman, and the rest of them are females. And I would say out of those, the 2 W-2s have husbands, and the rest of them don't. Oh, no. The rest of them have a mix of husband and single, but they also have other clients. So I'm like usually the biggest client they have, and then they have other work that fills in when I'm not keeping them super busy.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing with remote working is that people think, well, they're not working with me in my office. Now they can be 1099. That's not always the case. So it's good that you're doing that research and keep researching, because they keep changing the laws, and just stay ahead of it. That's all you can do.
Yeah. No, my guiding light's always just been take care of your people, do what works best for them, and just treat them really well. And the loyalty's there, the hard work's there. It doesn't matter how they're classified or categorized, as long as they feel like, they're being compensated fairly and they're happy,
right.
They have good work-life balance. So,
well, I got lucky because I went remote a year and a quarter, like 15 months before the pandemic hit. Yeah. So I didn't have to do a lot of the scrambling a lot of these other firms had to do. But my culture changed tremendously from having an all in-house W-2 staff to having all predominantly 1099s. But I'll tell you, the biggest thing is your processes. Like, you can't scale without those processes. And that's something even now I'm like trying to rewrite all of my stuff that we'd had for 15 years of documentation. It's like all of that goes out the window because now you don't have a building. You don't have all of these other positions. I was able to get rid of 40% of my positions without not needing a building.
Yeah, for sure.
I got rid of 70% of my overhead that wasn't tied to payroll when I got rid of my building. And now I'm like, how do I do it without a building? Like co-work space and home offices. And
I mean, I can't fathom. It's interesting because we were virtual to start about a year or two before the pandemic hit. And I had that vision in my head, that traditional path. Okay, well, we'll start there. We'll build up. We'll get the office space. We'll do the whole, do the whole song and dance.
Right.
Then the pandemic hit and just kind of like forced us to stay the path. And then we just started getting really good at what we did. Like, the virtual thing was working, It allowed us to be more competitive on price. We were figuring out process and ways to build culture in a virtual environment. I stopped thinking that I had to have this big fancy office to impress clients. Yep. And I started to spin it and say, no, actually virtual is better. And here's why that benefits you. And now we're in a place where we embrace that. And I can't even fathom ever thinking about taking on the expense of some big office. I just think we live in a different world, and I think it's going to dramatically change, especially when it comes to agency life.
Oh, I think that, and I agree. I agree with you 100%. I remember, it wasn't too long ago. I had a $15,000 mortgage payment a month, and that was not including everything else that goes along with it, right? Mm-hmm. And the coffee is like, you got 25 people and they want 3 different types of coffee and all the other things that go along with that. And it's just like, it's so much easier to pay them just a little bit more to be at home. I give my folks a stipend for their computers every year. So I have you max out at a certain amount. And so if you work this many hours, you get this, that's a percentage of the hours available, and that's what you get for your stipend. And then that way I'm promoting them working from home and providing them a benefit for working from home besides just the flexibility of it. Like, we have soft phones for everything. Nobody has a hard phone unless they absolutely need it. I have one in a drawer that I can send to somebody to do an IP, VoIP phone. But other than that, everybody's on their cell phone, so they can be in the grocery store doing whatever they need, and they can respond to Google Chat and do all that stuff. So, that right there is like the freedom that people want, but without the headaches of entrepreneurs. Like, most of my employees, my contractors, are folks who just don't want to sell anymore. They don't want to deal with the client's billing and all these other stuff. It's like, can I just work for you and do the work? I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I need.
Yeah. You said a word there recently that is it's the biggest word in our vocabulary, and it's, to me, the most powerful. It's more powerful than money. It's more powerful than time. Time kind of relates to it, but you said freedom.
Yeah.
And I think that has been my driving force in how and what drove me to start this agency and to build this team was I wanted freedom. Do I want to make a lot of money? Sure, who doesn't? But at the end of the day, it was like, I want to be free. I don't want to be forced to sit in a car 3 to 4 hours a day going to work. I don't want to be tied and chained to a desk because that's where you're supposed to be. I want to be able to go wherever I want, work when I want, to control my own fate, and so freedom was such like that was it for me.
Right.
And now that has been an incredible currency in the team that I built, because
That's
everybody
awesome.
that I brought in, that's what they want more than anything. If you tell them to stack rank like the benefits of what they're like, it's freedom.
Right.
It's the fact that they can go anywhere in the world and still do their job. The fact that I don't tell them that they have to work certain hours. To be in control of your own life like that is the most powerful thing, one of the most powerful things in the world.
Exactly.
And they value that so much. And you know what that costs me? $0.
Actually makes you money because
exactly.
I find like my webmaster has stepped up so many times over and over and over again and is selfless with the hours I give her so that we can have more diversity on our team. And it's like, I never asked that from her, and I would never ask that of any contractor. She just does it. You attract the type of person that you want when you are authentic to that, and I probably work harder than anybody in my business now, but once I get it automated to a point where I can delegate the responsibility of making decisions for clients on a regular basis, I'm taking my wife to Machu Picchu for her 40th birthday in November. Like, I have a deadline. I have to be gone out of the country for 33 weeks, and she wants me off the phone for 2 of those. So that means I can't touch my business. And so have you read anything by Mike Michalowicz?
I have not.
Okay, so there's a guy named Mike Michalowicz. He's a business book author. He wrote The Pumpkin Plan, which is great for starting entrepreneurs. And then the one that I got into was his Profit First. And then what we're talking about is his book Clockwork, which basically helps you build an efficient business that then allows you to be able to take off a month a year without touching your business, looking at your business, and coming back with more clients, happy clients, whole 9 yards. Like, it's grown without you, so that if you wanted to take another month off, you could. Right? That's freedom. That's freedom.
Yeah. Read that one.
Yeah.
Well,
it's a good book.
Cool. You mentioned culture. I'm kind of curious. That's certainly been one of the challenges, is how do you build a strong culture? Look, at the end we know that, I would choose this path and this environment over the traditional one all day, every day. But there's advantages and disadvantages. When you're not in the same room with people, you miss out on, the social ramifications of that. So I'm curious, what have you done? What have you learned, and what steps or technology or what have you put in place to kind of build a successful business and be able to kind of foster a culture in a virtual environment?
So it's one word, it's communication. Like, your communication in a virtual realm is completely different than when you're seeing people day to day. Like, you can smile at one of your employees walking down the hall and they know that you appreciate them. You don't have that luxury virtually. So you literally, so we use Google Hangouts to do day-to-day just chatting. Like, okay, we're in the office, that's what you do. And if you're not available to chat, it just sits there until you are, right? So it's great. So it gives them that freedom, the whole 9 yards. But then I always turn around and I say, please. I say, thank you. When I see something that somebody's gone a little bit above and beyond, not a lot, just a little bit, I'll be like, I appreciate you doing this more than you needed to, right? I appreciate you taking the extra step. That appreciation and that communication has to be conscious. It's because you can forget about it. And I will catch myself like, man, I haven't said thank you enough this week. I feel it. Like, you're like, oh, why I feel so cold today? Oh, that's why. Okay. I haven't said enough of how much I appreciate my team around me. And that is probably the hardest thing, but it is there. My culture has always been one of having client-centric employees, or team members is now what we call them, with a team member-centric company. So if all you have to do is take care of the clients, and all I need to do is make sure that you can do that at the best of your ability, everybody wins, from the company down to the client and back. Mm-hmm. And that right there, paired with a term I borrowed called constructive dissatisfaction, there's nothing anyone can't do period. There's more business.
Yeah.
There's more business out there than all of us can try to do. And so I always say, like, I want more good firms out there so that they can drown out all of these hacks that are trying to just collect money from unknowing people, with the next big, I'll guarantee you this. I'm like, guarantees in marketing, then you're a fly by night, right? Like, let's talk about things that actually move the needle and go that way. So I've always said, take care of the client and the money will follow. And so then I built my culture around that and just make sure that I communicate it now in a way that they see it.
No, I love that. I think, so I can relate to all that. Some of the things that we put in place that have just created an amazing culture is just, it's just some technology plays, like, using Slack, but we use this program called Bonusly, bonus.ly. It's integrated in there. So I've empowered the team to kind of recognize each other quickly and easily, just rewarding them. They can reward each other for just the smallest things or the biggest things. And, they get like an allotment every month to kind of share. And so they can trade it in for gift cards. So that's been huge.
That's cool.
Yeah,
like a little gamification then.
Yeah, it is. And they love it.
That's awesome.
It's for a couple $100 a month, you empower the team to kind of reward each other. It's just takes it a step further than just you doing, like, as a business owner, you doing that for them.
I love that. I love that. And I also, another thing that I've done just recently, we just hired a new web tech, and I let my webmaster, who's a 1099er, actually do all of the first round picks and interviews. And I chose from her top 2 is who I chose. Yeah. And she, like, that right there, like, because we talked about, we had a failure to launch on this guy's predecessor, and I was like, so what would you do different? Like, I always, get feedback from the team, when I feel like I could do better as a leader. And she says, well, can I be a part of the process? I says, what if I make you the process and I just clean up at the end? And she says, you would do that? I was like, yeah. And that trust that she will pick somebody that's going to work better for her, and which means it's going to work better for me and the clients. Yeah. I mean, that's priceless.
Well, it's empowerment, just empowering your team to feel like they have some skin in the game. That goes so far into getting people to just naturally and organically want to do more than what their job specifically states, right? And,
but you don't usually give a contractor that kind of empowerment.
No, for sure.
Right? They're usually transactional.
Oh, yeah. And that's the environment I'm in. I have to be careful what I say here because it could probably come back to bite me in the ass. But just transparently, I mean, I have contractors, but I treat them like employees in the sense that I don't look at them as just a resource.
Right.
Like,
they're not a vendor.
I take care of them. I still, but that's an environment on paper that makes sense for them. But I still treat them like they're a part of the business and that they have skin in the game because, it's just it's a different world.
I mean, really, if you think about it, look at your best clients. How do your clients treat you when you do a really good job, right? They nurture you. I've got, some of my best friends today are clients that I've had for a decade. You just become that. People you work with on a regular basis, and you do business with people you like and trust. And so I think it's natural to have a contractor become part of the family, if you will.
No, absolutely. Before we kind of dive into I want to talk a little bit about this rule of 26 that you talk about. But before, I want to kind of wrap up the agency side of things. Like, when you look back at what you've done as an agency owner, just imagine, because I think that there's aspiring or early stage agency owners that listen to this. What are some of the things that you look back that you would have done differently, or what are the things that really stand out that really helped you propel the agency to where you guys are at?
Oh man, so many lessons. I used to be in these masterminds, and people would always talk about niching and focus and all these other things. And I always thought, being a small business agency was good enough. And so since we did all these things, we were able to be this one-stop shop and all these other things, right? And what my company's become has been extremely niched, and to the point where it's like, if I felt like there was too much offering in one brand, I actually broke it into 2 different brands so that each of them can focus specifically on the processes and stuff like that. So number 1 is niching, and niching to an industry or niching to a size of business that you want, or a style of business. So like I focus on service-based small businesses. And if you're not in that realm, you got to convince me to do work with you, for you. Yeah. Otherwise, I refer you to somebody else because it's not there. It's so much work to try to get all of the business that you're not ready for, right? If you get a lot of requests for it, that's great. Put that put that feather in the cap and go, how many times do I got to hear that before I make a service out of that? But then you do that calculated and stay saying yes and then figure it out later. That's where you lose so much money, so much time, effort, quality of life. Everything just goes down the crapper. And I watch young agency owners do that. They're like, oh yeah, I just got my first ... I'm like, I never heard you talk about that. Well, they asked about it, and I don't want to say no. Like, yeah, you actually do want to say no. They'll respect you more later when they've had a bad experience and they say, you know what, now I do that. Oh, great. You're prepared to do that instead of sucking at that. And now you've wasted all of that trust they had in you. So I think that's the biggest one there. And then number 2, pay yourself first. Yeah. Profit first. I used to give out Michael Gerber's E-Myth to help businesses understand why they needed me. Now I give folks profit first. I tell people about profit first because every business should do their accounting this way. And it's really paying yourself first. Regardless of what that percentage is, you are always paying yourself. Because I spent 15, almost 16 years not paying myself first. I had people that made more money in my company than I did. And they didn't even work as much as I did. Right? And that right there is a big disjustice. Yeah. Time is a commodity that entrepreneurs give away so often, and it's a one commodity you cannot replace. Yeah. And so, just respect yourself, pay yourself first, and give yourself that the respect. I mean, that's all it is. Is like you have to value yourself more than that business. Make that business work for you, not you work the other way.
Yeah, I've approached it that way for sure. I mean, I always wanted to make sure that foundationally we were in a good spot before I pulled people in and started paying them, because even though they might be 1099s, I wanted to be able to assuming that they do a good job and they deliver results, I want to be able to maintain that commitment to them and build off of that and never have to pull it back because I grew too fast or I pulled too many people in. Right. Certainly part of that is, you got to take care of yourself, Yeah. Because if you don't do that, that's going to come back to bite you in the ass, because then you're going to start asking yourself, why am I doing this?
Right.
So
and I think that you bring up a good point, though, is that, creating that foundation is all about systems. Mm-hmm. And I have always struggled with that, just because, when I was much smaller, when I only had 4 or 5 of us, it was easy. I was the guy,
right.
Boom, boom, boom. And I never took time to document my thing. So now I use this a program called Trainual. And now we're documenting, and it makes it so much easier to swap people out, because contractors do come and go, and they don't always work. But if you have this, it's a lot easier to bring somebody on, because a lot of times I would hold on to people because I'm like, man, I can't lose all that knowledge. They've been with me for 3 years. No. Right. Or instead, towards the end, when we had everything lined out, I was like, oh, that's great. You want to go and do that. I celebrated them taking on another job. And that told everybody else there that, hey, listen, Buzzin wants us here if it's good for us. He's not trying to hold us hostage, right? And I think that's really good for culture as well. But that documentation is the only way you can do that.
Yeah, well, I love it. Okay, before we wrap anything up, I want to kind of dig a little bit to this thing you call the Rule of 26. We were talking previously about how we both define small business. I think that's open to interpretation. But
right.
Share a little bit about your insights about how you define small business and this Rule of 26 that you talk about.
Sure. So small business is you're right. It's such a vague term, right? Yeah. And it depends on who you talk to. If you talk to the government, it's one thing. You talk to lenders, it's another. We talk to us. Even you and I were thinking, oh, if you're $1 million, you're not a small business. I'm like, yeah, you are. And then it's like, what does it look like? And so I usually look at it as like the size of the business, right? How many employees do they have? How many leaders does it take to run the business? So I have an $11 million client that is run by a divorced couple. Mm-hmm. It works. Don't ask me how. They're both getting. One of them they're both getting remarried. Anyway,
wow.
Yeah. So they deal, but they're seasonal, right? So they run a landscaping company. So they do most of their business in about 7-8 months out of the year, or 6 to 7 months out of the year, and so that means that they go from 100 employees during the summer down to about 20. And back and forth, right? And some people would think 20 employees. Well, if you're doing labor work, you never see those people at the office, right? They're out there. And the only people who are in charge are those 2 people and maybe 1 or 2 project managers. So at best, they got a staff of 4. That's a small business, even though they bring in $11 million. Yeah. Think about it this way. How many people does a podcaster who brings in $1 million have? One person, probably 1, maybe 2 people, right? That's a small business. Even though they might be grossing $4 million a year, they're still a small business. So I look at it that way. I don't look at the money they're bringing in. I look at how they operate their business. So one of the things that I deal with is I usually only deal with the owners because they're the ones that get the money at the end, right? And so one of the challenges over the years is like to try to help them understand KPIs. And if you go to like HubSpot, they've got like 68 key performance indicators. And I'm like, nobody's paying attention to 68 KPIs. That's just stupid, right? And if I told my clients, hey, these 10 we're going to look at, right? So I decided I needed to find a way to really bring it down to lowest common denominator. And I created the rule of 26. And the rule of 26 is strictly for working to make your website a money-making tool in your marketing toolbox. So I did the math and I figured out that if you increase your traffic, your conversion rate, and your average value per purchase or average value per client life by 26% each, you will get 100% increase in your revenue from your website. That's a really easy thing to do when you chunk those down at those 3 steps and they can understand, okay, so I just need to get, if I have 100 people coming to my website, I get 126. Okay, great, we get that. All right, so I've got a 1%, now I need a 1.26% conversion rate. Okay, we got that. All right, the value of my clients is $100, now I need $126. Boom, got it. And now I'm making twice as much money as I ever was with it. And you do it again, right? So it's like, okay, we did that, great. Now let's do it again. And the bigger you get, the harder that 26% gets. And there's other things you can do that. But for a small business, to tell them 3 things, and that's all you get to focus on, as a digital marketer, now I have 3 objectives, and they know if I win or not because they feel it in their pocketbook.
Yeah. No, we take a similar approach or philosophy like around reporting. Oftentimes, and the Air Force is a perfect example. They came to us, and they're like, we were confused. We don't know what's going on. And they shared the report that they had been getting on a monthly basis with their previous agency. And it was like this 30-page report with a bunch of nonsense in it. I'm like, I can't even make sense of this. Like a client's going to look through this and no. I'm like, that's horrible. and that was the part, part of the reason of looking, they didn't know. And they were being overwhelmed by crap that didn't matter. And that's the approach we take with like reporting. Like we create a really customized dashboard that just gets to the point of the things that matter to that business and just simplifying it so that they don't have to spend a ton of time trying to figure out what should we be thinking about, what should we be paying attention to. Right. I think that's where a lot of agencies slip, is that they think, oh, I've got to present this massive thing that demonstrates all of the depth and breadth that we have of knowledge around marketing and
building value.
Yeah, no, and it's like, that's not what clients, that's not what they're looking for. They want to just what is it that they can just, you got to make their life easier. And I just feel like, we come into so many situations where that doesn't happen.
Well, I think that you have a lot of agencies that like to fluff up the numbers so that if you have enough KPIs, something's up higher than it was before. Yeah. So then you focus that as the win versus, hey, listen, none of the actual key KPIs, the 3, for World 26 is these 3 things. None of these increased where we wanted them. Why not? Yeah. Right? It's okay not to win every month, as long as you learn, right? And it's like, okay, well, we tried this. This didn't work the way we liked it. We'd like it to work for you. So we're going to try this now. Okay, great. Let's keep going that way. Boom. And you keep that there. So being vulnerable to that, not winning every time, I feel allows you to be more clear and give more clarity to your clients, right? Instead of trying to hide behind. I did a blog on one that was like, don't go chasing KPI waterfalls is what it was called. And it was like, you just don't, like, that's all fluff. And there was a time as an agency owner that I allowed my staff to do that. Like, hey, how did this client do? Oh, well, the one thing that our main objective didn't quite get there, but we have these KPIs that are showing progress towards it. I'm like, really? Is that really, or are you just trying to keep your job?
Yeah, love it. Love the TLC reference. First one of the podcast.
Well, there you go.
I can't imagine we get another, but awesome. I love this stuff. So just a couple quick hits here. One of the things I love asking everybody, what's a piece of technology, a gadget, a book, anything that you've consumed or used recently that just kicks ass that you recommend for folks?
Well, I think we already touched on it, and that's Mike Michalowicz, Profit First. You got to read that book. If you're in a business, I don't care what business you're in, that book will change your life. If he had wrote that book another 5 years earlier, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now, and I'd be a lot more wealthier.
Awesome. I'm reading that. I don't read a lot of books, but recommendations like that, I love reading that stuff.
Ebook. Make it an ebook so you can take the notes, because that's the only way to do it. Because he does walk you through. He's really down to earth, New Jersey boy, real cool guy.
Excellent. I love that. Awesome. Anything I didn't ask you that you want to share with the audience that we touched on today?
Well, if you're interested in what I was talking about with the Rule of 26, you can go to ruleof26.com to check it out. That is a free download. You will put your email in. I will not spam you, I promise.
You beat me to the last question. Was how can people find you? So they can get that. Any other places that people can find you, or any of the stuff that you're involved in? Buzzworthy.biz
is our main website, and that is actually in the midst of a rebuild. So you're going to see something that's been around for about 2 years, which is just kind of your generic firm. But we're reinventing how we're talking about digital marketing and being able to really display the DIY through DFY journey so that people can have a choose your own adventure with a digital marketing firm. Awesome. So we're really excited about that. And that'll be out, see it probably right around the beginning of June.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for carving out some time. Awesome stuff. I love talking to other agency owners. These episodes, I think they're going to go one way and they go in another, and that's just shows that they're organic and not scripted, and that's the way they need to be. I love it when that happens.
Awesome.
So,
it was great to talk with you, Jason.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Work.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on the show. And that'll do it for this week's episode of Socialistics. Make sure you like, share, review, all that good stuff. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.